lost to the ether and in need of a re-release. Nowadays we get a lot of remasters and ports of older JRPGs, but there are still many that remain out of reach. Here's a few that I personally feel need a revisit. And when I first thought of the topic, this was the first one that came to mind. One of my personal favourites, Eternal Sonata, which still remains trapped on the 360 and PS3. Eternal Sonata is still a brilliant game. If I played it now for the first time, I'd still love it. The game is set in a fictional world dreamt up by Polish pianist Frédéric Chopin, who in the real world is lying on his deathbed. This world he has dreamt up ultimately becomes his final journey before passing on. There's something endearing about this game, whether it's the vibrant and colourful world based on music, the well-designed characters, its soundtrack, or indeed the admittedly shaky dialogue at times, which in itself is quite charming anyway. When I first played this back in 2008 on the 360, it was one of the only JRPGs available on the system, and I was just getting into the genre at that point. Eternal Sonata was essentially a key to the kingdom in my case. It still holds up even today and wouldn't be that difficult to remaster either, of that I'm sure. And I hold that same opinion for Radiant Historia, which did get a remake in perfect chronology, but as a game is still stuck on two Nintendo handhelds, the DS and 3DS. People have good memories of it, it's still lauded as one of the best JRPGs on the platform, if not the best. You play as Stock, a soldier in the kingdom of Alistel, a war-torn land facing both political conflict and a mysterious desertification spreading across the continent. Early in the game, Stock obtains the White Chronicle, a magical book that allows him to travel through time, which gives him the ability to influence certain events in parallel timelines. If he finds himself stuck in one timeline, then that's the indication that he has to change something in the other. It leads to an interconnected and overall well-realised story, allowing you to see various what-if scenarios, and that's only expanded further with the Perfect Chronology remake. Again, much like Eternal Sonata, I can't see this being too difficult a game to port. Other titles like The World Ends With You, a game designed with the DS in mind, got a re-release on the Switch despite its control layout. Radiant Historia's gameplay was more traditional despite the platform, so the transition from DS to a modern platform won't be too bad in my eyes. If it did get that re-release, it would undoubtedly sell well. And the same holds true for Skies of Arcadia. This is a game that has been teased for a revisit for a few years now, but we've still yet to see anything, which is unfortunate considering the undoubted pedigree the game has. Even in 2025, it's still one of the more unique premises for a JRPG, a world of pirates that roam the skies, and a massive collection of continents set in the clouds. As far as adventure goes, Skies of Arcadia has it on lockdown. And that's not all it does well, it's got a good amount of meaningful side content, a great set of characters with the likes of Vice, Ica and Fina, you've got humour interspersed over a decent story, the ship battles, though a bit slow, are a highlight of the game, and it's just got that charm of a JRPG right down to its roots. I do think there are a few things that will need to be adjusted for a re-release, like the high encounter rate and maybe some way to speed up the ship battles as the animations can take a while to cycle through, but at its centre, Skies of Arcadia is still a great game. As is the next one, and it's going to be the first where I'll encompass a collection of games rather than just one, which in this case will be Artelico, the first two games. In the lead up to Atelier Yumiya's release, there was acknowledgement from producer Junzo Histori that he personally would like to revisit the franchise, but it would all depend on fan demand. Of course, in the present day, Gust is mostly focused on their ever-growing Atelier series, with even recent franchises like Blue Reflection being left behind. It's a shame for Artelico because the first two games are still really good. You've got amazing music, the turn-based battle system which utilises a vanguard and the power of Ravertails in the backline is great. The idea of the Cosmospheres is a neat concept that aids in the development of the main heroines, and the stylised worlds still look great. There's no doubt to me that the second game is better than the first, but that's not discrediting the original, which still holds up as well. If it came out as some sort of physical bundle with the first two games, it would sell well, I'm certain of that. Now, since we've mentioned Artelico, I feel that also needs to be mentioned to the other games that were made around this time by Gust as well, which was Atelier Iris. But unlike Artelico, I personally think the only worthwhile game for a remaster would be the second one. While there are some loose connections between the first and second game, there's nowhere near enough to say it impacts the story in any meaningful way, and the third is basically a completely different universe, which is fine by me because Atelier Iris 3 Grand Phantasm is easily the weakest of the Iris trilogy, so I'm fine to forget that one. The first one has its charm, but it's no doubt dated in many respects. Iris 2, on the other hand, is a brilliant game, and I personally think it would still do well in the present day. I think it strikes a really good balance between the Atelier focus of a game, which are the light-hearted crafting sections, and the typical JRPG adventure, which is what Iris was steering more towards. As far as embracing that hybrid approach, Iris 2 does it better than most. It uses a similar turn-based approach like Artelico, the music is amazing, the art style is great, the only thing that holds it back is its fairly basic story, but even that is alright. And besides, I don't look to Atelier for deep narratives, that's never been the case. Chances are the Iris trilogy will remain in the dust because quite simply Gust want to forget it even existed, but if they re-release just the second game, it'll be worth the effort. And since Atelier Iris has been mentioned, it only makes sense to mention Manakemia as well, and I'd say both games would be perfect for a remaster. The first Manakemia is the better game, simply because the sequel didn't do much to separate itself. It was pretty much a carbon copy of the first game, but both are still great JRPGs even now. The first Manakemia in particular adopts a style that I think would go over very well in the present. This whole idea of living a life in an academy, having optional social links with the other characters is something that is quite popular nowadays. Other franchises like Fire Emblem, Persona, Trails, a lot of them incorporate the social sim element, and it has only aided them commercially. Manakemia is one such game that does the same thing, and it does it really well. If it came out now, I think a lot of people would like it for that aspect alone. Then you add on its colourful cast of characters, Mupi in particular being a highlight, the music rules, the turn-based combat is very satisfying, and the alchemy is actually quite enjoyable. Plus, if you like the first one, the second game is effectively more of the same. For me, there's no reason why these two games wouldn't do well, though much like Iris, it seems like Gust would rather just forget about them. Manakemia in the present day remains the lowest selling sub-series in the Atelier franchise. Talking about a collection of games that need a revisit, I think this is one of the most requested remaster topics, which is the Zeno Saga trilogy. Now, Gears could come into this conversation too, but for me, if Xenogears were to be re-released, it needs to be remade. I personally think the gameplay hasn't held up too well, and let's not beat around the bush, it's an unfinished game. The only reason we have Disc 2 in that form is because Tetsuya Takahashi had to make a compromise. He ran out of time and didn't want to leave the game without a conclusion. For Xenogears, I think that game needs to be remade simply to show its complete vision, and remakes are not the topic of this video. And in some ways you could say the same about Zeno Saga, it was meant to be more than just the 3 games we eventually got. Unfortunately, the nail was put in the coffin with Zeno Saga Episode 2, and Episode 3 was left with the unenviable task of rounding out a story that was meant to be far more grand. Despite that, Episode 3 did a good job, it has to be said. Now, to me, there's clear differences in quality between the games. Episode 2 is easily the weakest in my eyes, a good game but not without frustration, especially in regards to its zone-based combat. Episode 1 has some odd design choices, like the lack of music in the overworld, which makes Episode 3 the best, no question in my eyes. But you can't just remaster Episode 3, because this is an interconnected story and part of the appeal of Zeno Saga is its story, so really you need to do the entire trilogy, and maybe even Pied Piper as well. But it would do well. If some quality of life features were added, like a fast forward option, dedicated autosave and all that jazz that players are used to now, it would be a success. The Zeno series is a juggernaut for Monolith Soft nowadays, anything they put out for the series, even older games, would do well commercially. The next one though, Sakura Rewards, I'm not too sure about its commercial viability, but I think it has a clear market. Like me, I'm a fan of these types of games, and though it's not a typical JRPG, it is a game that fans of the genre can enjoy, and it shares common elements with the genre. Unfortunately, I think it won't be revisited anytime soon, simply because its reboot in 2020 failed to capture a large enough audience, which I personally think isn't down to the quality of the game, it was because it came out exclusively on PS4 and had poor marketing. But it's not the reboot I want to talk about, I'm going all the way back to the 1996 original on the Saturn. The only reason I could play this is because some awesome fan translators put out a patch for this game and its sequel. To this day, the only mainline Sakura Wars games that are officially available in the West are the 2020 reboot and Sakura Wars 5, which flopped. That sucks because Sakura Wars as a series was huge in Japan during the late 90s, and the first game at least still has a lot of charm. It's a visual novel, SRPG, dating sim hybrid that plays out like a 90s anime. And despite that mishmash of ideas, it just works. It shouldn't, but it does. The setting helps as well, set in the 1920s around the period of Japan becoming more open to the world around it, and the diverse range of heroines are undoubtedly the highlight. A great collection of characters, brilliant animation for the time, a lot of optional events. Sakura Wars is great. And its overall structure, which remains in pretty much all the games, is in itself timeless, or at least I think so. Though it's a dream of mine, I hope it gets a revisit and we get the older games officially released in the West too. The last game for the video will be a standalone, and much like a lot of the Sakura Wars franchise, it never released outside of Japan, but fan translators are a godsend, and it's because of them I was able to play Nora and the Time Studio, which is Atlus's take on the Atelier franchise. It has a minor focus on story, heavier input from characters, and its crafting system is the highlight. The game's protagonist Nora is on a pilgrimage to become a fully fledged chronomancer, and in order to do this she has to spend 3 years in the Misty Forest to hone her skills. These 3 years form a time limit that fans of Atelier will be fairly familiar with, which translates to around 6 hours for a complete playthrough. The gameplay loop is straightforward. You'll go to exploration fields to gather materials, get involved in turn-based combat here and there, and then work with what you've gathered to deepen your armory of recipes. During this period you can also pursue character stories, and this is where you may want to jump into some additional playthroughs. You won't be able to see all of these stories in one go, but 2 playthroughs allowed me to pursue the arcs of my favourite characters, and that was enough for me. It's a great little game. Sadly it is locked to the DS, and even in Japan it's quite pricey if you want a physical edition. And just like Sakura Wars, I can't see Atlus going out of their way to revisit it considering the juggernauts they now manage like Persona and SMT. But a man can dream, there's always a place for relaxing JRPGs like these. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe for more JRPG content, and consider joining my Patreon if you're interested. Peace.